It gives me great pleasure to welcome everybody alongside Tonia, and I have the wonderful privilege of introducing Tonia, who is one of our Women in Education ECIS Special Interest Group committee members, and she's kicking off the year with our session today. Now, for those of you who don't know Tonia, and I'm sure many of you do, Tonia is the head of primary school at the International School of Hanover in Germany. She's a global learner and thought leader. She has immense gratitude for life's small joys and courageous actions in our complex and fast-paced world that exemplify hope, empathy, and our collective sense of humanity. With 24 years of experience as an IB educator, Tonia has taken on a range of teaching and leadership roles in early years, primary and middle school. She deeply appreciates the exceptional mentors who have provided profound inspiration to her throughout her career, and she's been fortunate to cultivate meaningful relationships with remarkable students, educators, and families while pursuing her professional journey on 3 continents. Tonia has contributed immensely at ECIS, and she is a member of the International School Anti-Discrimination Task Force, and at the Leadership Conference 2025 think tank contributor. And she's been a guest speaker as in our SIG, and now a member of the committee, as I already mentioned. So we are thrilled to have Tonia today kick off our events this year, as she takes the reins in this workshop. What we'd like to do now is to hear from you before we kick off. We'd love you to help us by writing in the chat where you're calling in from, and what you hope to get from today's session. What would be a takeaway that you might like to get from today's session? And as we wait for that to come in, we'll just tell you that Tonia has a fantastic presentation today. There will be 2 breakout groups so that there's an opportunity for you all to network and get to know each other. And we've been mindful about allowing a little bit more time for those breakout rooms, because often we find that you're just in one and then you're kicked out again. So we've tried to give you the opportunity to network, to meet each other, to make new connections, as well as have those meaningful discussions. Please, if you have any questions please put them in the chat as we go along, and I'll do my best to monitor that. And obviously at the end, Tonia will allow time for questions and answers. And yeah, we're looking forward to having this session today. So Tonia, I'm going to hand over to you as I stop all this phone malarkey going on.
Thank you, Pauline, for the lovely introduction. I am thrilled to be with you all this evening for some. Perhaps it's late evening for others, or early day, depending on where you're joining us from. And I see that there are many of us joining from different parts of the world, which is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for taking your precious time to be part of this session. And we'll delve right in. And just to explain that this session will have 4 entry points, and one of the entry points will include building connections. Another one will be understanding stress. Another will be resilience in action, and then a few self-care reflections and strategies to guide, hopefully, some of us forward, more so in terms of thinking about how to take charge of our own self-care, not so much about having all the answers to give out, to share with you. So we are delighted to have this opportunity, and it's a joy to be part of the Women in Education Committee and Special Interest Group. And I've certainly gained a lot of inspiration since joining. So I'd like to start actually by just giving you a quick overview of session goals. So there will be 3 main goals for the session: making connections, navigating stress, and celebrating resilience. We will come back to a similar slide because there will be prompts to guide you in the breakout rooms relating to these three overarching session goals.
And Tonia, as you get going, I just want to tell you where people are joining for
Oh,
this evening for
fantastic.
you. Okay,
Thank
so we
you.
have people from the south of England, from Luxembourg, from Monterrey, Mexico, from Kaohsiung, Taiwan, from Ljubljana, from Copenhagen, from Stuttgart, from another one, Switzerland, Nairobi, Kenya, from Mumbai, from Amman, Jordan, and from Abu Dhabi and from Berlin, and some calling in from England as well, and I'm calling in from the Netherlands. So we've got quite a group with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. And so just to explain a little bit of what I will be doing throughout our time together is asking some probing questions. In true coaching style, you may leave this session having more questions than answers, but the purpose of that is to give us that opportunity to really step back and think about our practices and who we are as educators, and what drives us to do what we do every day. There's so many different ways I could have started this session. And in the end, I had a voice in my head that said, Tonia, stop thinking about how you're going to start the session and just write. And so that's what I did. And so here we go. I'm still in wonder. Resilience has been one of my favorite words for a long, long time. I'm still in wonder, though I wouldn't be able to fully explain why. Other than being fascinated by what the word resilience implies, how it takes shape, and how the actual word rolls off my tongue. It's a bit of a mystery. Resilience. All I know is that when I think about it, something ignites inside of me, and I pay attention. I'm still in wonder, though, and I wouldn't be able to fully explain why. Maybe resilience reminds me of the fierce potential of the human spirit. Could it be a form of hope in action? Or is it the fearless courage shown by inspiring women, role models in my own life? Resilience. All I know is that when I hear the word or I write the word, I care. Still in wonder though, and I wouldn't be able to fully explain why. At times, I travel with resilience nestled in my pocket. Other times, resilience hovers over my shoulders, caressing my braids. There are even moments when the voice of resilience echoes, just breathe. You can do it. Or you did it. Tingling my ears. There are even moments when the voice of resilience echoes again, just breathe. You know you can do this. And other times it feels like a cape nudging me to close my eyes, take a leap, take flight. Resilience. All I know is that when I feel its presence, it pushes me forward, it lifts me up. Does it lift you up? I'm still in wonder though, and I wouldn't be able to fully explain why. So that's just a poetic reflection I came up with. And I thought about whether I would actually share that. And then I thought that's part of resilience, opening up, being a bit vulnerable. And those were the real pure ideas that came to my mind when I couldn't figure out how I actually wanted to move forward with the launch of this session. And I decided this is what I was going to do. Right now, what I'd love for you to do is just to unpack resilience for a short time. If you could add a word or a phrase in the chat that speaks to what resilience means to you, that would be fantastic. So please just go ahead as it comes to you and just add a word or a phrase in the chat. that might resonate with you from your own experiences with resilience?
We're seeing connections, courage, embracing change and challenge, not giving up, having courage,
Mm,
facing challenges, sisu,
brilliant.
not giving up, consistency, strength, empowerment, hidden strength, trusting yourself.
Mm.
It means getting back up when it gets bad, bouncing back, power, bouncing back, trusting yourself.
Oh my goodness, these are all giving me goosebumps. Wow, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much.
Commitment, drive, and ambition.
Excellent. Brilliant. Okay. So I'll move on and just start by saying, I'm thinking of mirrors and windows. I'm really thinking about mirrors and windows. This idea of knowing ourselves. To know ourselves as human beings, as educators and leaders, is a journey where we continually nurture and strengthen our roots, our unique complexities, and multiple identities. So, when we're thinking of building strong connections to others, we need to think about how to build that robust connection within ourselves. Thinking, what are my experiences, values, beliefs, perspectives? And this idea of how can a focus on human commonalities provide an anchor? How can that help us to be more equipped to explore differences, to celebrate diversities? Elena Aguilar says that I know we can't create what we want to achieve or what we want to see for children without also attending to the adults who work with them. We just can't separate these two. Quite a powerful statement, I think. So, what about knowing ourselves? And how do we nurture those roots? Where do we go with this daunting idea of do we really know ourselves? Personality, strengths, talents. What about how to address fears and bias or assumptions or preferences? This idea that these all impact our interactions. Suzanne David has a quote that I'd like to share as well that says, by knowing who you are and what you stand for, you come to life's choices with the most powerful tool of all, your full self. So I have a question. Where do you get your energy? And here's another quote. This idea that it's really important and it's empowering to understand your tendency towards introversion or extroversion. I'll just let you take a look at that quote. Right? This idea that we have finite amounts of energy, and the more we understand it, and the more we're able to apply it in strategic or helpful ways, the more effective we'll be. I often think about what it means to have a culture of trust. That loaded word, culture. This is a beautiful word. It's a fascinating concept, and it's daunting. Culture on its own can be daunting and amazing and exhilarating, but culture of trust adds another layer. this idea that it's something that takes time, a lot of patience, perseverance. It's not something that can be rushed. It's one person at a time. I like to think one group at a time, one context at a time, one conversation at a time, one day at a time, and one moment at a time. We start with one. And human commonalities, well, if we come back to that, this capacity of people to relate to one another, it's powerful. And it's driven by this idea that we feel we can connect with someone on some level at some stage of our interaction. And then we can take it further. Another statement that I quite love, being our messy, imperfect, authentic selves helps create a space where others feel safe to be themselves too. And you can read the second half. Before we move into breakout rooms, I would like to just share a few anecdotes, things that I wouldn't necessarily think were that important to share, but a few aspects that I've reflected on and I've thought, why wouldn't you share? Perhaps it could resonate with someone. Perhaps it's a speaking point or a topic that could flow into another conversation in another space and another time that I might not even realize. And so here goes. How do I connect with others? Well, there are a lot of different ways. But what can I say right now in this short space of time? I would say some of the things that are important to me are morning greetings, being able to greet children in the playground every morning, going around to every class every morning to greet the teachers and the classroom and the children in action, or as often as I can, but that's intentional, trying to do that every single day. Gratitude. I send out a newsletter every Friday to my team, but I always start with gratitudes, thanking people for what they've either done or an accomplishment that has come through that has benefited the team or the community. Or thanking someone from the facilities team or someone that works in the office that does a lot of behind the scene work that may not get acknowledged as often as we would like. Starting a staff meeting, sitting in a circle with everyone with no desks, just the physical energy of not having furniture between us and having an equal space in that circle. I started doing that a while back, not realizing the impact it would have or the way it would shift the energy in the room. But something as simple as that, I found shifted the energy in the room and brought everybody more on equal footing and drew more people into conversations. Staff well-being. I had an excellent Zumba instructor when I lived in Singapore, and I am not an instructor, but I offered to do a lesson and I taught myself how to do it, and I led a lesson during a professional learning day as a component of that day. And it brought together people from different parts of the school that would have never normally come together, from admissions, from finance, from secondary, early years, primary. And it was a moment where we realized this is something we love to do together. So later in the year, I offered a few more. But again, not as an expert, but someone that taught myself to do something that was stretching my edges, not realizing the impact it would have in connecting people. I started a girls' soccer group, identifying a need that there's a lot of male-dominated play out on the soccer field, and what could we do about that? And so starting that team and building the confidence in girls and giving them a forum where they could get the training they need to upskill themselves, to have more confidence, to go out to the field and play in mixed teams. So that's just a few examples from me. But what I'd love to do is give you time to connect and discuss more about you and how you make connections and how you navigate stress. So the idea is that you will be in the breakout room and you will discuss prompts 1 and 2, making connections. So what inspires you the most as a leader, and navigating stress. So what is difficult to tackle as a leader? And at the end of the session, I'll actually share a resource with you, because what I did before is that I asked several female leaders that I admire what their responses to some of these prompts would be, and I've synthesized their ideas in a list. But as you go into the breakout room, you can discuss your own experiences. And then at the end of the session, I will share the summary of what some other female leaders around the world had to say about making connections, navigating stress, and eventually about what strengths they admire in leaders. So we're going to start with the first breakout session, and afterwards, I'll just ask participants to share a couple ideas, either through the chat or out loud with the whole group, about what resonated with them in the discussions, and you will have 15 minutes to explore this together. Okay.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back. I hope that you had some fruitful discussions in your breakout rooms, and we're going to keep moving forward here. We had time to discuss what inspires you, but also what you find difficult. At the moment, I would just like you to take 30 seconds and in the chat, because we won't have much time to speak whole group. So in the chat, if you could just throw in something that resonated with you about what inspires you about being a leader, whether you're a teacher leader, an administrator, whether you're working as a sponsor outside of schools and you know, supporting educational organizations, please.
So we're seeing collaboration with others is really important. Shared experiences, being my authentic self, and others appreciating it.
Okay.
Communication, inspiration, hope, and connections, inspired by others and their breakthroughs and successes. Working with students inspires me the most. I really miss that in my current role, so I'm grateful the opportunity I can get to do so.
Yes.
Trust and vulnerability. Someone shared a great quote: when facing challenging personalities, don't water the rocks. Use your energy for those who are open. I like that. Wow. Inspires, giving a platform voice to those that are generally not heard. Listening with presence to show acceptance, to develop trust. Wow.
These are brilliant. Wow.
Working with students and watching them making progress. Integrating mindfulness and DEI. The joy of learning, intrinsic motivation and connection when helping someone. Understanding team members and working to bringing out their magic. Authenticity and gratitude, and being in classes. And examples of intentionally organized opportunities to continue the conversations with colleagues, sharing challenges and successes with colleagues. People talked about that. So that's the sharing for you, Tonia.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reading those out, Pauline.
Mhm.
Thanks, everyone. Great. So we're gonna keep going.
I'm
And
going to do one more before you moved on because I think this is
oh,
poignant, and I was going
please
to say
do.
this before you moved in. Being reminded that even as a teacher, I am in a leadership position.
Yes.
That is really important.
Yes. We are all leaders in different capacities, no matter what we're doing in schools,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to segue into this idea of understanding stress and oh, the big S word. So, cause and effect. There is a direct connection to stress when we believe that our values and our expectations are being tested or compromised. So, how do we navigate stress? Well, a lot of it is about self-management, to be honest. Um, so we have emotional processing, right? That amygdala, that little almond shaped, that part of our brain is a small but mighty and I would say underestimated force on our whole being. I would say that noticing and naming is important. This idea that we think about which experiences in our lives most impact our stress levels. How aware are we? Is it gossip? Is it misconceptions? Is it when a great idea is frowned upon or shut down? Is it receiving an angry or aggressive email? It could be about just giving yourself the gift of time in that type of situation before responding, right? Or thinking, could this be addressed in person eventually? Examining root causes is critical. Where is the stress really coming from? Is it what's in front of you that's creating that stress, or is it something more deeply rooted? And identifying patterns. Which emotions are triggering healthy versus unhealthy stress? Because we know that not all stress is bad, right? Some stress can be helpful. But how do we identify the patterns of the emotions that are causing the unhealthy stress? Right? What might be a small step for one person in one context is a leap for another person that might actually be right across the way from them. So that's really important to keep in mind. Keep going. I love this quote by John Maxwell. Your values are the soul of your leadership and they drive your behavior. Let's think about that for a moment. Your values are the soul of your leadership and they drive your behavior. So we move towards our next breakout room, this idea of looking at resilience in action. I have lots of anecdotes connected to these phrases. I'm happy to share them with you separately, but essentially I just wanted you to be able to read through these two slides and think about how they connect to you, how you relate to these, which ones may be more challenging for you than others, and why. And be measured means actually, by saying that, I mean be measured in your responses, be measured in the way you're following up, the way you're thinking and decision making, so that you're taking a balanced approach as much as you can. Consulting if you need to, taking a step back if you need to. All right. Well, Resilience. Simon Sinek says, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. That's also one of my favorites. But when you make a statement like that, or you say you believe in it, how much pressure does that put on you, right? It's one thing to be in charge, but taking care of people in your charge, that's a very, very different ask and a very, very different type of demand that can be emotionally uplifting, but also emotionally draining. So when you go into your breakout groups, what I'd like you to think about is the prompt about leadership strengths you value the most, but also about um, the role of patience, right? Um, the role of timing when you're sharing, particularly when we're sharing difficult news or when we're receiving difficult news, the time we take for ourselves before we go on to the next. Developing the art of respectfully saying no with fair reasons. Um, and this idea of not feeling that you need to be the smartest in the room, because if we feel that we're frequently the smartest in the room, it could be an indicator that we need to change rooms, or we need to reevaluate our perspective of the other people in that room with us. So the next breakout room will be 7 minutes. We'll have to shorten it just a little bit. But I do think it's important that you have some time to discuss this idea of resilience and some of those statements that were shared in the earlier slide. How do you face a situation when it's difficult? How do you interact when there's conflict? Who do you go to? And why does that matter? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we are going to conclude soon, and I can only imagine the fabulous discussions that were happening. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, you're welcome to add a note in the chat if you have something that you'd like to share with the group. And I will wind down by starting with a poem that by Britton Oakman that I think is quite compelling. And I came across it and I thought, whew, this is different. She says, I lied and said I was busy. I was busy, but not in a way most people understand. I was busy taking deeper breaths. I was busy silencing irrational thoughts. I was busy calming a racing heart. I was busy telling myself I'm okay. Sometimes this is my busy, and I will not apologize for it. Quite powerful, which I'm happy to share it as well if anybody would like a copy of it. And in terms of self-care, you can see what's up on the screen. Um, Again, the idea today was not to be able to say to you, this is what you need, because everybody needs something a little bit different. There are those basic needs, but everybody generally needs something a little bit different, depending on the day, the context, the situation. And what I'd like for you to um, leave with today is this idea of slowing down, finding moments to embrace the small joys, finding inner strength on those moments when you just feel like you have no more, but it's there somewhere. When you step back, sometimes you can find that. Reprioritize when all the demands are getting overwhelming. Reprioritize, plan, and delegate if you have to. And know who and where to turn to and take that step. Need help with figuring out your self-care. So that's essentially this idea of building healthy habits. Yes, you can turn off those notifications after a certain hour in the evening. Yes, you can do it. You can avoid reading the news right before you go to bed, because there tends to be a lot of doom and gloom in the news. You can do something different one day just to shake things up, even if it's not something you think you can commit to every week or every month. You can do this. And in my poem at the beginning, I mentioned something about the voice saying, I can do this, or you can do this. You did it. And that's wisdom from my toddler nephew, who, when he was going down the slide a few months ago, right before he started going down the slide, he shouted, I can do this. And there was something really powerful in that moment. And I think there's so much we can learn from a 2-year-old about our own resilience and what we're capable of and what we can actually achieve. So, on that note, we keep taking care of ourselves and we keep taking care of each other. And the idea is there's always going to be a moment when we feel, well, what if I fall? But this beautiful quote by this young lady says, but what if I fall? But oh, darling, what if you fly? So that connection that brings us together and keeps us feeling whole. So that's it from me for today, and I'm delighted to have had this opportunity. We do need to end on time, and I thank you and I encourage you to keep lifting each other up.
Tonia, thank you so much. Applause. You can unmute and applause because we've all been so inspired this afternoon. My goodness.
Woo!
Wow, what a
Thank you.
perfect end to my working day. Anyway, let's put it that way. Tonia, thank you so
You
much
all.
for inspiring
Thank you.
us, really. The gratitude is flowing through the chat right now, and you'll get a copy of that. For everybody here, Tonia has some resources that she's going to share after this session, plus the beautiful poems. Please share them all. We'd love to, I'm sure I'm not alone in that, in saying we'd love to receive them. Thank you all for being here, for taking time. It's great we heard people were cooking while they were listening, others were on their drive home while they were listening. That's exactly what we want to achieve by this group. Join us however you can. You are very welcome. And mark your calendars, please, for February 17th, when our next event is with Proserpina, who's joined us here today as well. Get registering and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Apologies for going slightly over time, but really great that you could stay with us. Tonia, thank you again so much. Great to see Sarah from ECIS and the whole group. And thank you, Nancy, for helping us out as well on our first event this year. We really hope it. Now, if everybody, just before we finally jump off, could come on their camera so we can get a great photo, that would be amazing. We're going to